Hi everybody, welcome back to Compiler, where we work on the SpiderMonkey compiler for JavaScript. We are going to pick up where we left off last time, and this time I didn't do very much preparation work, so this is a lot more unscripted than it usually is. The reason being, I think it might be interesting for everyone just to see how I actually solve problems rather than me having everything prepared in advance. So I'm allowing myself to make to not be as certain that I'm going to get somewhere interesting at the end of this as what I've been trying to do in the past. But let's see how it goes, and hopefully it'll be neat. So we are at the very tail end of the bug we were working on for the last 3 or 4 months. It took a lot longer than I thought. I thought it was going to take a maximum of 3 streams to get through that first bug. But let's take a look at it. And I created from the drawings that I did a bug journal, and maybe I'll do this for each bug that we do. This is a collection of all of the sort of little cartoons and drawings and things that I did related to this bug, which you can find on Bugzilla. It's number 12869997. And I just want to walk through this document a bit. It is available online already. I don't know if everybody's already seen it. Maybe I'll drop the link right now into the chat. Just give me a second to find the link. Should have had that prepped. Where did I put it? Oh, I closed everything. Ah, there it is. Okay. There's the link. And so if you want to follow along, there's a link. So I'll just quickly go through this just to refresh our memories about what we covered and fix that bug where this wasn't actually working the way that it was supposed to. So we started on a test 262 report. The test name was prefix increment, and we looked at the spec text of how this is intended to work according to the spec. What I have here is a copied version of what's written in the test 262 test. So if you want to see test 262 test, you just want to go to this URL, test 262 report. And yeah, the test name is here. You'll find it in the document. The basics of the tests, that was failing are here. There's 2 things that are being tested in that test. We expected to get that dummy error, so we're asserting that it throws dummy error, but we weren't getting that. We were instead getting undefined has no properties. And when we investigated it in the very first stream, the reason for this was we were evaluating base before we were evaluating prop. Didn't mean to cross that out. When we should actually do it in the opposite order. Prop should be evaluated first and base should be evaluated second. That's the bug we've been working on for like 4 months. Okay. Oops, wrong direction. So the problem when we look at the SpiderMonkey code was related to the order that we were putting the bytecode in. And we needed to rearrange it. So just to give you a sense, we had check object coercible. You'll notice if you go into the spec or watch the previous episodes of this, check object coercible was happening before we got the name. And we wanted to do it after. Okay. Oops, I keep going the wrong direction. So additionally, in that stream, we covered what is bytecode and how does it work. I'll leave this to you to read, but effectively bytecode is we take your JavaScript, and what the front end of the compiler does is it transforms your JavaScript into this list of things called bytecodes, and we operate on the bytecode. The bytecode shares some similarity with assembly, so it's it's basically just a list of things that will take instructions that were it'll work with the stack, and instructions that push things to the stack, it'll take stuff off the stack. So if you're familiar with stack machines and how those work, that's what we're doing here. Oops. We also took a look at like a simplified version of a bytecode, concretely looking at it from SpiderMonkey. We're not the only compiler that does this. So this is a pretty common technique. Java does it. All of the JavaScript engines do it, I think, as well. One of the differences between SpiderMonkey and JSC is that SpiderMonkey's bytecode is a lot more low level than JSC's bytecode. So this is just taking an example of ours, specifically getArg, where we are looking at, so for example, this A and this B, we're getting 2 arguments here. And then we're putting those onto the stack. And then we do this operation called add. Add takes those 2 and it pushes the result of add onto the stack. And this is just for your information. This comes from the drawings that I did before. So if you want to review, you can read into this. And now back to the bug that we were working on. Our problem was we couldn't do a naive implementation, which is on the following page. The naive implementation would have been just move this check object coercible. It was up here before. And what we want to do is we want to move it down. Whoops, I made that bigger. That's not what I wanted to do. We wanted to move it down here. We can't do that because the bytecodes rely on how the stack is structured. So we had to do something called a swap, and we had to do it twice. So let's take a look at what that looked like. So we would push one thing onto the stack, we would push a second thing onto the stack, then we'd reverse their places, we'd check if the object's coercible, we wouldn't be able to do this step. So this is like, we're not doing that, but that would have been nice if we could just directly do 2-property key and we didn't have to worry about stack order. Once we do check object coercible, we have to go and swap again. And then we can do 2-property key and get the right argument there. So that was fine, but that was basically this solution. We had 3 bytecodes instead of 1 bytecode. It was a little bit slower, but that wasn't the main issue. The main issue with this solution was that we were getting a worse error message. And the way to solve that was to introduce a new bytecode, which is what we spent the rest of the stream looking at. What does it take to implement a new bytecode in SpiderMonkey? So to give you a tiny bit of review, if we go here and we go to opcode, here are all of the opcodes for the engine, and you can read through them. They all have documentation associated with them. And additionally, you'll notice that there's this big piece of documentation, this very large comment that has smdoc starting with it. This is, you can search the SpiderMonkey codebase and find things like smdoc, like things that are flagged with smdoc. Those are sort of like foundational pieces of information about the engine. I'm going to drop this in case anybody is new, so that everybody can follow along. So we looked at that, we implemented a new one, and then we had to deal with the fact that we implemented a new one, which took a lot of time. Okay, so we also talked a little bit about what's the difference between an interpreter and a compiler, like actually. They do very similar things, they run code, but how do they do it? So the difference is that interpreters are actually like looking at each instruction and being like, okay, I'm supposed to do A, so it'll do that instruction in whatever implementation language. So in our case, it's C++. And it's the same, it'll loop through this giant for loop and be like, what's the current opcode? Do that thing. What's the next one? Do that thing. A compiler, on the other hand, creates a set of instructions based off of a given set of instructions and compiles it down into machine code. And rather than executing it within the context of C++, which also eventually compiles down to machine code, what it does is it just creates a native implementation and will run that directly on your machine. So in SpiderMonkey, we do have, since it's a JIT, which means a just-in-time compiler, we start off with the interpreter, which is where we first implemented the bytecode. That's the simplest place to implement stuff. But then we have to deal with the this phase of things. So it actually starts with a baseline interpreter. The baseline interpreter does very similar work to the interpreter, but the difference is it starts gathering information. And part of that information is an inline cache. through the first pass that we did through the code base, we implemented the new bytecode without any inline cache. And basically we just, what we would do is we would fall back to the interpreter and do the C++ implementation each time. So it was not something that would ever land. There were also a number of problems with it that we didn't go into detail, but just to give a sense of how do you just get started with it, we did a really simple implementation relying on the implementation that was in C++. And then we did a second pass where we actually implemented the inline caches first for the baseline interpreter. That doesn't look like anything, sorry. Actually, those arrows don't look like anything. So we implemented it simultaneously for both the baseline compiler and the baseline interpreter because of something called cache-IR and the way that cache-IR works. We also introduced our own guard, which was is not null or undefined. We didn't end up using it for Ion. I never finished the implementation for the Ion compiler, but we implemented it in baseline, and we also would have it work, over here in something called warp. So we looked at the implementation for it, but in the end it wasn't working. Here's a little bit of information about our internal script representation. So we have this object called, data structure called JSScript. So if you want to dig into the code yourself, you'll be able to find this and you'll become familiar that these slots are actually where we're storing information related to different compilation stages. This is just more information, sort of doubling stuff that I've already said. And the next section that we did was the implementation of a inline cache for prepare set lm. So the concept behind inline caches is essentially if you've got branching statements, and in JavaScript, because it's a dynamic language that's loosely typed, where you can change what's being accessed from being a number to a string or to something else, we end up having to like check these branches of a tree of as we're running the code. Like, are we doing a string? Okay, no, it's not a string. Okay, is it a number? No, it's not a number. Is it a symbol? So we ask these questions, and this takes some time. It would be better if we just were like, we know this is a string. Oops. String. We know this is a string, or we know this is a number, and we just do the actions that need to happen related to the type. So that's what inline caches help us do. They prune the branches, the paths that we might take through the code. We start that process in the baseline interpreter, and we use it in baseline, and then we use it in Ion as well. We implemented this, so there's this thing called a try attach stub, if I remember correctly the code. This try attach stub, and it checks which type it is, and if it's a string, it knows what to do, and then it gets used in the different places. Of course, again, going back to the fact that there's polymorphism in JavaScript, we might end up with something that we don't expect from the perspective of the inline cache. So we might go from having a string to having a number, then we have to invalidate our assumptions. And here we have a guard being like, are you a string? And the first script is like, yes, I'm a string. The second script is like, no, I'm not a string, I'm a number. And then we have to fall back, and in the fallback, which is done in the VM, in the fallback, we attach the new stub that would be able to handle the fact that it's a number, or that it's a symbol or something else. So we're at the point where we're looking at finishing the bug. This is what we've done. I just walked through all of these steps that we did. And there's one problem. It's still not working. And I decided, rather than trying to force my way through it last time, that we should do it together on another day. So today's another day, and we're going to finish it. And I'll ask you how you want to go about this, and if you want to try something, you just tell me in the chat if you want to try something different. One thing that we didn't do is that the Ion compiler does not have an implementation of is not null or undefined, because there were issues with is not null or undefined because we were negating things. Well, not negating, we were checking if it was not true, that it's null or undefined, whereas all of the other guards are checking if it is true. So yeah, we would have to think a little bit more, but we've got some experts in the chat who are going to help me do this, I hope. I hope they'll volunteer to help me do this if we decide to do that. But if we decide not to do that, I have a new bug for us to take a look at, and we're going to get it done today. I made sure that it's something that we can get done today and we can do it together. I will show you that bug very quickly so that you have an idea and you can think about what we're going to do with it. So here's the bug. It was posted by Jordan he goes by LJ Harb on the internets. And he noticed that there's a confusing message with an unquoted hash identifier. So the example that he's giving us here is document query selector foo, but I can just give you a quick demo about what that looks like, or you can drop it into your console on your browser, but we can just do console. All right, we don't even need to do that. We can just do X. And there we go. Private fields are currently not supported. Now, if you're doing something like with the DOM and you suddenly get this, you're doing document.query selector, and then you do hash foo, like you basically just forgot the string there. You wanted to do that. And then auto-completion messes everything up. But you just forgot to code everything, and then suddenly you get this message that doesn't really relate to what you were doing, and it's difficult to tell what to do. So I'm gonna let you think about that, and if you want to check out the bug while I'm talking, you can definitely check out the bug. So this is gonna be sort of something to tide us over until the next one. I'm preparing the next series of streams, which are going to be around top level await. I still need to get a review for that. I don't want to tell you folks the wrong things or set you astray. So I want to make sure that it's right before we dive into it and do a walkthrough of how that was implemented. Okay, let's look at what was failing. Are there any questions, any thoughts, any comments? Silence. Okay. So what was failing last time is if we decided, I've already got the next thing ready. If we decided to run well.js, which is where I've got the code example. So we've got it, we modified this and played around with this file quite a bit. So our code example is like, this is one of them. We call it here and we call it multiple times and then we print the error. So that's what we were working with. And it looks like it works, right? But it doesn't. It doesn't work. And I'll show you. We can say that we want to compile to Ion right away by adding this compile flag Ion eager, and we get a segmentation fault. We can inspect this through LLDB. That doesn't, like, I did the wrong thing. I'm missing a space. Oh, the last line of my terminal was cut off. Sorry. Let me resize that. Is that better? I hope that's better. Yes, good. Okay, so we have something failing. I'll run it. If folks are unfamiliar with LLDB, I'll just show a couple of things that I learned about LLDB. I'm also quite new to it, so maybe some people also have some hints for me. So basically we hit this assert. A is general register, and it's failing. So that's not good. We can do backtrace, which is BT, and it'll give us a trace of what happened. Ideally, at some point. Yes, there we go. And we can see like the functions where this is happening, like to register, to out register, and then visit prepare set lm. We can also walk up by doing up, and then we actually can see also what's going on in the code. So here we are in visit prepare set lm, and to out value is failing for some reason. And when I had implemented this on my own before going onto the stream, everything worked and I was like, it's all dandy, whatever. But then I tried to do it on the stream and it failed. And the reason that it failed is because of my copy pasta. So I'll show you where that was. So here we are in the lowering. So the code we were looking at earlier is in code generator, but we're not looking in code generator. We're looking in lowering right now because that's where the bug is. And you'll notice, so I didn't go into very much detail about what these things are doing because I'm not super comfortable with what this does. We have one instruction that's redefine and one instruction that's add. And I got these from the check object coercible. But the thing that we want to do, check object coercible doesn't redefine what's, it doesn't redefine the key. And the thing that's happening here, where we're hitting the bug, the reason why we want to have an output is because prepare set lm should modify whatever it gets as the property expression into a property key so it can do an access. And we combined toProperty key with check object to coercible, but we're not getting something that we can use here. We're not getting a general register that can be written to. So to get some inspiration about what we should have done, let's take a look at toProperty key. And what we have here instead is define box. And I spoke with some of my colleagues and clarified, well, actually I spoke with Tom, who's in the chat, and I asked, what's the difference between define box and redefine? And I tried to read the code on my own as well. It was a little bit more difficult to understand what was going on there. If we go to clear and I probably got the wrong thing here. This is going to be awful. Here we are. So if we look at the definition of this redefine, I tried to read it on my own and I was like, I'm not getting very far by myself. So I asked for help. The reason that it was difficult for me to understand is the comment wasn't really clear to me related to the case that I was looking at. And I was thinking like redefine should allow me to do a, wait, now I've confused myself. Yeah, redefine should allow me to like redefine something, but it was all wrong. So from what I understood, define box is when we want to get a value out, and I will let someone, if they are more familiar with this code, clarify this more, but it does work if we make the change from redefine to define. Well, we have to remove redefine or leave it in there. We'll try a couple of different things. But yeah, so I was like, this is an area where I don't really know what I'm doing, so let's just see what will happen. Okay. So I'm not sure, just to walk through what this is doing. I don't think that we want to use add anymore, but we might want to use redefine, because redefine had obviously a use here in visit check object coercible, where we may be placing it back. I guess we are so Nicola has said redefine define as a reuse of the input. So yeah, so this would output check val again, and I think that's important that we get check val unchanged back out, and then we want to define a new thing on top of what was the key. So we're replacing the key. I hope this is right. So this is my hope. I hope that this is doing the right thing. So let's get out of here. And I'll make this. It's going to take a minute, but it shouldn't take too long. Yeah. You can only have a single define per input. So probably this won't work. Oops. This is going to take some practice. We might we might hit a couple more cases like this through the stream, but then I get to learn, so that's exciting. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. So redefine will attempt to set the output, and define box will override it with something else. So basically what I did just didn't make any sense. That's where I'm like, I'm really struggling a little bit with some of the lowering stuff. Okay. There's another thing that we need to do, which I didn't do last time, which is we need to decide what we want to do here. So 2 streams ago, we created this cache IR entry, the prepare set lm IR generator. And I introduced something called guard is not null or undefined. It's currently not defined for ion. We can do the ion version of it, or we can switch it back to guard is object. I'm happy to do either, but doing the implementation in ion, it takes a little while, and it's not anything new. So it's the same stuff that we've gone over before, the same process. Are there any thoughts from people if they want to see that or not? Also, I've got some unresolved issues with is not null or undefined. Okay, this should work now. Finished compiling. There we go, it worked. Yay. It was really slow though. So it now compiles and runs and everything that we expected. But yeah, so I'm just wondering what people want to do. So I didn't do guard object, that's right, because at the moment this guard is not transpiled, and for some reason this doesn't, so we basically don't attach in those cases, and for some reason this doesn't cause any problems. But it might actually be because we're going through the error case, and the error case pretty much never really works. So I could change this to guard is object. And that's what we had before I implemented a guard is null or undefined. And that should do it. Yeah, so Ian is right. If we use guard object, if we use guard object, do we just not attach in some cases? So let's take a look at the spec, because technically it should be possible. So here's require object coercible. This is the rule that we're trying to get around. So object would technically only fit this. But it wouldn't work, for example, for Boolean or number or string, symbol or int, I think. I think this is the issue that I was trying to avoid. We should only fail in these 2 cases. So like if, for example, we did, yes, if it's not an object, then we go to the fallback and then we do a slow VM call. That's right. So it technically would still work, but maybe that's not such an issue. I was thinking it was a big issue, so I was like, let's implement a new guard. Those cases, I don't know if we're going to throw in those cases. So for example, if we do ++ false. Oh yeah, that's true. We would probably throw here. Actually, we get nan. I wonder, that's so funny. And if we have 1, yeah, so not null or undefined, yeah. They are pretty rare, I think. I think that this isn't really gonna happen. So maybe it's not a problem that we don't optimize it. Probably it's not. It was fun to do anyway. It's the first time I got to implement a cache IR thing. That was fun. That's true. Nobody's ever writing that. Okay, so then let's not bother with the oh, I did it wrong. Let's not bother with the null or undefined guard. And let's just go with this, because this is fine. And what I'll do is I'll clean up this. Oh, I'm still showing the spec. Sorry. What I'll do is I'm going to clean up this revision and submit it so it gets reviewed properly, and then we're going to see if it can get merged, if it's not significantly slower. When I ran the performance tests on this, I did a couple of micro benchmarks, and it was faster than our old code, surprisingly. So it might be an improvement. I need to double check and then have somebody review it and make sure that we've got everything right. So that concludes this bug, which is really exciting. And as I mentioned, I haven't quite finished top level await. So let's look at something new, which I introduced at the beginning of this stream. Have I done warp? Yes, I did do warp. We have a warp implementation. Let's take a look at it. Is it JIT warp? Yes. So here's build prepare set lm, and it was so much easier than Ion. Part of the reason I wanted to show how this would look in Ion is that it was so hard to do, and warp is just like really, really fantastic. It's really easy to write warp code. Warp is a new higher tier JIT. I believe that we're still going to use Ion for like the really, really fast stuff, but then we're going to have warp in between baseline and Ion. The JIT engineers can correct me on that, but it's really amazing. It's like so nice to write. You can reuse the same stuff that you define for baseline, so you reuse the same cache IR. Oh, Ion is going away completely. This makes me super happy. It's like really, really nice to work with warp. So this is our new optimizing compiler. Yay, this is awesome. Yeah, it was super easy to write. It was beautiful. So I don't know if the streams have been going up recently. There's been a little bit of difficulty getting everything on YouTube. If they're not online yet, then I'll get them online, because I do think that we implemented the inline cache in Ion without using cache IR, if I remember correctly. And I went through all of the steps there. So I'm going to make sure that those things are going to go. I think those things are going to go online soon, if they're not online already. Cool. So let's dig into that new bug. Okay, cool. So we have a confusing message with unquoted hash identifier, which is going to be really a problem when we hit something like document query selector and someone forgets a string. So we should probably improve this error message. And there's a really good comment here from Jason, who also works on the front end and just generally on the engine. He says that there are two bugs to fix here. In the short term, to change it to something like illegal character, because telling people about private fields is a little bit too complicated right now, and maybe we should just say that this is an illegal character and let people figure out what to do. Alternatively, and the second part of this bug is that we will eventually turn on private fields. So if people aren't familiar yet with private fields, it's a new specification that's currently in stage 3. It will introduce private fields to your classes. Oh, it's been merged into the class fields proposal. And it'll allow you to protect certain information. For example, if you're a library author, this is going to be really useful. So here's an example of defining a private field, and then you would use it like this dot, and then whatever. And this will be really useful for people working in authoring libraries, or in a company where there are multiple teams that are using each other's stuff, but they shouldn't have access to the internals. It'll be useful there as well. So these are the two bugs we want to solve. The first is the short term. The second is when we do have private fields, how do we tell people that this is a mistake? Jordan has a recommendation that if something's inside of the class body, then we give information about like what a private field is. It starts with a hash, that it must be used after a dot in an object. And then there's also an additional proposal, which we're not going to look at here, about the in keyword. Yeah. The second option is outside of a class body, the message is private fields, which start with a hash, may only be used inside of a class body. And then an additional help string, which is double check to make sure that you do not intend to quote a string, to help the people who are encountering this. So I took a look at this, and my thinking is that if we start off with private fields, which start with a hash, this isn't telling people what the issue is that they're looking for, and usually error messages, at least from my perspective, should give the issue up front. It's like, we have something that we don't recognize, and here's a context where we don't recognize it, and maybe give some additional information. So I proposed unexpected private identifier with the identifier name outside of a class body. So for this specific use case. And then followed by, did you mean to use a string such as whatever the string might have been? And then for the time being that we have private fields turned off, we can have something like unexpected private identifier. Private identifiers are currently not supported. Did you mean to use a string? Additionally, I would suggest that we leverage something that we have in DevTools, which is when you do X, and I'm just going to use the increment, we get an error message, and we get this link that says learn more. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to take me to a page on MDN where it tells me more information about the exception that I just saw. So the JavaScript exception variable is not defined, occurs when a non-existent variable is referenced somewhere. And this is really great because we can give examples of where this might happen and try to guess what kind of error situations people are seeing. And this can be really useful, especially for beginners who are trying to learn how to use the language, and they hit something like this and it's hard for them to figure out what's going on. This document should help in clarifying what's wrong with their code. I think that this is great, and I would love to leverage this. One of our engineers on SpiderMonkey, Nicola, who's in the chat, did this really cool page which takes a look at how many times a given error gets hit and the associated MDN page, whether or not we have it documented. Oh, I'm being attacked by the light. And at the moment, the private fields one isn't documented. So if we go like this, we don't have a learn more link. What did I want to say about this? Right, so let's figure out what that error message is and take a look at how many times it's being hit and then see what we can do to fix it. And thankfully, Jason actually linked directly to the message. So here we have in search.fox, JS message private fields is not supported, and it's a syntax error. And here's the message that we're getting. So we can change this string to something that makes more sense in this case. But let's take a look at where it's happening. And it's happening here. So we are inside of the token stream. So we're going like token by token, character by character, and checking if it's something that we need to do something with or not. And this is get token internal. And if we click on that, we can find out where that is used. So it's used in get token, peak token position. We don't need to go into depth there, but just to give you a sense of how to use search.fox, because it's a really cool tool. It'll take you directly to where you want to go. Like if you want to see how a given thing is being used, search.fox, everything is linked and it's amazing. I've been using this tool a lot, like all the time. I go back to GitHub and I'm like, no, I want search.fox. Okay. I'm really being blind. Sorry, it's very bright here. Okay, so in this case, if options.privateClassFields, then create a token start from this source units -1. So we're going back one, I guess. We get the start of the identifier. So starting the identifier here. And we check if we saw an escape sequence. I guess this is like a regex escape sequence. Let's see. Identifier escapes. None. Saw Unicode escape. Ah, it's a Unicode escape. Okay. And then if we have seen one, then it's a bad token. However, if we haven't seen one, then we return an identifier name, which is a... Oops, that's not what I want. Return... Oh no, that is what I want. Identifier name, which creates a token kind that goes out. If I put a sticky highlight on that, it didn't work. Sticky highlight. Okay, there we go. No! Sticky highlight. Okay. So then we see everywhere that it's being used. And this will define, I guess, an identifier name and then give us a token kind for it. Okay. And if this isn't fulfilled, then we get into this case where we roll back and we don't get this unit, and then we report an error message and return a bad token. So that is what is going on here. So let's see that in action in the code. And I'm actually going to reuse my existing, I'm going to reuse the repository that I'm currently on. I'm just going to commit the changes so that we're working on top of something, but because the patch stack is so high, I have a feeling it'll take a while to compile again, and in the interest of time, I'm just going to work on top of my current patch stack. But normally I would switch to the trunk of to Missoula Central. I'm going to sync a bit. 1 second, I'm going to ask somebody to close that. Okay. Also, my computer is going really slow. There we go. Okay. So if we get this to run, we do dist, and instead of running our previous file, actually I'll show you the file that I've got ready for this. So in here I've got a couple of different cases that we can play around with. The first one we're going to look at is this console log foo, which is replicating the error that was reported. And I can run that using my shell and enable private fields. So there's a flag called enable private fields. It's not available. Just to look back at the code, what was it doing? We've got this options private class fields, and that means that this is behind a flag. So I click on this and I'm like, where is this being defined? What's the flag I should use? There are a couple of different ways where you can discover which flag you should use. I just looked through here, and how did I do it? Where did I find it? I think I went here. But there's an easier way to do it, of course, which is just check out the help file. And it's somewhere in here. Oh no. Okay, I'll just show how I wasn't showing my screen, sorry. Sorry. I found it earlier, and it gets defined. It gets defined somewhere, but I forget exactly where. Doesn't matter. It's not that important. If you search for private fields, you will find it in the search box. Okay, now I'm going to bring you back to the terminal. I was looking at this, and I tried to search for private fields and couldn't find it. But I imagine that it should. I would have imagined that it should be alphabetical, but I don't see it here. There's enable streams. There it is. Enable private fields. And then it tells us enable private class fields. So that's how we know. Okay, so we run it and we get the same error. Expected expression got private identifier. Right, there's two ways to run this. That's if private fields are enabled, we get a different message. And if they're not enabled, we are going to get this one. So this is the problem message that was commented on. Private fields are not currently supported. This is confusing. This is the new one that after private fields are enabled, we are going to get expected expression got private identifier. So I guess I can do that here. Where was I? We want to go here. So I think we still want this error message in the case that private fields are not supported, but they're encountered inside of the class body. That's why I had these other cases in place. So for example, what happens if we have this? And then I run it without enabling private fields. Okay, so this message should still be used, but we don't have any information about whether or not the thing that we're looking at, whether or not the token that we're looking at is in a class body or not, because we're in the token stream, and the token stream is basically just looking character by character and saying, okay, this character is valid in this situation, this one is not. We don't have a ton of information there, I think. Unless I'm wrong. So if somebody wants to correct me, please do. But at this point, we're going totally unscripted, and I'm just going to see what I can find out and try to solve it. So I don't know what's going to happen. Okay, so looking at this, my first thought is we have this message, but there's a number of other error messages associated with private fields, such as JS message illegal private field. Which is private fields are not valid in this context. I want to see more about that. What does that do? And is there anything else? Private field double. So that's another interesting thing. I just want to see what's been done with private fields in the context of errors. Right. So this is inside of the parser. We're not in the tokenizer right now. We're in the parser. And in the parser, we can check if a property name is illegal. Oh, I'm looking at search words. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I need to change my setup a little bit. Just to walk you through super quickly, what I was looking at before is I was looking at these messages here. The first one is the one that we're interested in, which is private fields are not supported. The second one is illegal private field, and the third one is private field double. And I opened those just to see where they're used and just to get a sense of how these cases are being handled. This is the JS private field double, which is being thrown here. And let's see what that's doing. That's in the interpreter. And here's check private field operation. Let's learn about check private field operation. Okay. Okay. So Matthew writes that the error messages are minimum viable product. They're precisely where we need them with only minimum amount of context provided. They certainly could be improved. So we'll try to do that here. And I'm just taking a look at what we can do with that. So we're using this check private field operation in the interpreter. So we're already like running the code. It's also in baseline and ion. I don't know if we want to do that for like something that looks like it should really be thrown earlier, like while we're parsing. So I think we're probably looking at somewhere in the parser, probably not in the tokenizer, where it is currently. The tokenizer might be able to have something like the error message proposed by, I should have opened this in a new tab. And Matthew also writes that check private field operation handles special case behavior where we need to throw errors that are distinct from normal property accesses. Yeah, and I think that I was also going in a similar direction. It looks like this is happening for a special case, and it's not something that we want to do for this case, because we can get all of that information statically. Like, are we in a class? Are we not in a class? That should be available to us at the parser level. Adding a private field to an object that already has them, or accessing a private field on an object that doesn't have one. Right. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to this. So I'm wondering, because what we're doing here is we're going to create an identifier name. I think that we should still say that private fields are not supported. I think we should just modify this message and then modify the message that happens if we fall through. So I think the first step is changing this message and making it better. So yeah, it's further down than I thought. Okay, here we are. Here's the line. Are there any thoughts about this message? So there were some suggestions in the bug about what we want to do with this message, but I just want to open it up. If anyone's got some ideas, what they would like to see here, just keeping in mind the error case that we see, which is that people are trying to access an identifier in HTML and they're getting this message about private fields. That's a pretty big cognitive jump. Also, not everybody's aware about private fields. Are there any suggestions about how we can change this? Is the quality of the video really bad? That's not good. Let me take a look. It might just be on. Because for me, the streaming seems to be good. I've got 30 frames, 50 frames per second, and I seem to have a good transfer rate. Okay. All right, so nobody's got suggestions about how we should change this. So I will take one of the suggestions from the bug. And I guess we can take Jason's suggestion, which was like illegal character, and then just have that as a short-term fix. So that's what Jason suggested, illegal character hash. Do people think that we should add a little sentence saying something like, did you intend to use a string or something like that? I'll let people think about the error message. Meanwhile, I will think about how to solve the second half of this problem. Which is, what do we do when we turn on private fields? It won't be a good error message either. So expected expression got private identifier, blah. Let's see if I can find that here. No. Does that exist? It doesn't. So. And what's the exact wording of this? Got. That's something else. Oh, that's funny. This is going to be hard to search. Okay, here we are. Oh, that's a really general error. Oh, the JS illegal private field, it looks like we get that from oh, that's C types. Okay, the error message that I was looking at is not going to be helpful at all. But this one, that happens in property name. So property name context name, property name and class. So if the property name doesn't exist in that class, we throw this message. And I can show an example of what that looks like. So for example, I think this will trigger that. Oh no, this will trigger the other thing because I didn't do. Oh, that's reference to undeclared private field. Yeah, you're right. We do hit something else first. Oh, let me try something. Yeah, we hit this other test. We hit something else first. I don't know if we ever hit that illegal one. Maybe Matthew knows. Needs to be outside of the class. So something like this, maybe? That's reference to undeclared private field. Maybe I got that wrong. I'll just try Matthew's case. We seem to always be hitting the reference to undeclared private field or method Y. Interesting, but not too important in our case right now. Okay, so I changed the message. So this is different now. This will be maybe more useful. I don't know. Maybe we should add some hint here. Or let's actually take a look at getting the MDN page up. We'll do that in a second. Okay, thinking. How do we get the body? How do we get the information around the body? So if I switch back to search box, if we do have a token kind private name, but then we would have to generate a private name no matter what. What's the error that we get again? I'm forgetting immediately which error we get. Okay, so this is all going to be commented out, and the error that we get is expected expression got private identifier. Okay. Actually, maybe that code that I was looking at earlier is useful. Let's take a look at it again. So that looks right. Okay, yeah, this is it. And this is just a type error. When do we throw a type error? What I'll do is, where is this? Let's see if I can hit it and then walk backwards. Yeah. Which means that I need to build this. I don't know if I built it already. Actually, it shouldn't matter. And I want to put a breakpoint on type error. Is this in JSC types? I wonder if this will work. Hello, everybody. No breakpoint. Okay, how about I just put it in a file? Or can I do this? No. Fine, fine. Let's do this. Why am I struggling to put anything? Oh, I forgot the CPP. What am I doing wrong? Okay. Let's see how that thing is failing. Failure. Fabulous. Okay. Okay, let's find out why this error is happening. Just to show again, the one that we're investigating is expected expression got private identifier. And I want to crawl back up and see where the best location will be to check if we're inside of class, and if we're not in a class, then we're going to add a new error there. And I seem to have forgotten how to set breakpoints, so I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. And the file name that I'm trying to set it in is inside of... I hope this works. And the line is... What am I doing wrong with this? I swear that it's called C-types. Oh, C-types is not related and may not be part of your build. Then where am I getting this error message from, I wonder? Maybe folks can help me find it. Let's take a look. So, FFI and privileged JavaScript. So I need an error that looks like it's this shape. And when I searched for it using regex, I get expected 0 got 1. And I'm not really seeing anything else that fits that error message. Maybe this is something that's shell specific, that's true. Search for the enum value. This one? Or maybe I want to search for this. Maybe it's this. Oh, maybe it's this. How did I not get this when I searched? Huh, 1 second, let me see. Let me see that error message again. Let's see what that error message was again. Syntax error first, expected expression got private identifier. And EvilPie has a suggestion. Let's take a look. It's the same page. I have no idea. Yeah, I think it's unexpected. Ooh, unexpected token. But that's the friend API. Oh, fascinating stuff. All right, and Matthew also has a suggestion. Let's check that one out. And that may be it. The definition of unexpected token? Yeah, that's it. Huh, wonder why I didn't get that when I was searching with regex. Okay, let's throw a breakpoint there. Found using the magic of RR. I really want to use RR. It would be so nice. Okay, breakpoint goes into see if this will work. Or rather, what's the file name again? Parser. 11334. Oh, this is, that's a terrible idea. LDB. I think I want to actually already be in there. Good, we have an error. And if I print the token, all right, you people are not seeing what I'm programming. I'm sorry, somehow I've forgotten how to do all of this. Okay, so we have a token and it's a private name. Good. We go up, it's a primary expression. Well, actually, we're already where we need to be. Matthew found it. This is where we want to be. Reusing an existing key would be a problem when you come to document it on MDN. Yes, we will probably want to. Nicola, NBP says if you want better documentation, you also want a dedicated error message key, as pages are indexed by error message key. And if we take a look at what is being recommended here, let me grab that. Ooh, yes, this is interesting. So this gives us access to the MD. This is the key that we use when, for example, we have an uncaught identifier and we click Learn More, and we get this list of error references. Then we've got this big list of error messages where we probably want to add a new key to handle the case of private messages. Okay. So also, there's this really fantastic page done by NBP also, which has private fields not supported, which is the message that I just changed. And this here is the number of times that's been hit in the browser. So 16,000 times is a lot. But we don't have any documentation associated with it. And we'll take a look at how to set up the documentation. I asked for access to add new pages. So if people want to contribute and add better information for error messages, I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Okay. So if token kind is possible identifier, blah, blah. Let's go back to programming. Where was I? Ah, yes. So let's go into the parser. And this is on 1, 3, 3, 4. So we're here. We're falling into the default case. And this function is primary expression. I'm trying to remember. Okay, it's a primary expression. Token kind is possible identifier. I got it. This is a primary expression. Primary expressions this should be all we need to do. Did I do I did something wrong. And we should just error in this case, shouldn't we? Private name, thank you. Okay. This should not have any observable difference, which is good. I just want to make sure it doesn't have an observable difference. And what I'm going to do after this is I'm going to add a new JS message. Or rather than making this unobservable, why don't we make it observable by using this, using a different message that we saw before. And I think it doesn't take any options. I wonder if this will work. We'll find out. And then we'll make it better later. And while we're waiting, let's take a look at the thing that NBP mentioned, which is how do we modify and add new things to MDN. So one of the things that happened last month is we lost most of our MDN team. So we need to start taking over the documentation work and making sure that things related to the JavaScript spec have good documentation on MDN. So for example, let's say you want to modify an existing page. What you need to do is sign in and then click this button, edit. So I'm going to sign in quickly. So I'm going to actually intentionally not show you my screen right now. Just a second. Okay, I have signed in. So now I'm logged in. Ooh, and it's overlapping everything right now. Sorry about that. How did that happen? There we go. So now I can actually go ahead and like edit this page. So I can add information to this wiki now that I've signed in. So if you come across a page on MDN, all you have to do is sign in with your GitHub or with your Google, and then you'll have a profile based off of that, and you'll be able to edit. You can publish and keep editing. You can preview also. So here's a preview page with what's been changed. And yeah, so that's basically it. You won't be able to add new pages. So that'll have to come from someone who has the credentials to add new pages. But if you contribute a lot to MDN, possibly you'll be given those credentials and you'll be able to make your own pages. But this is going to be really important work. So if you're watching this and you're like, oh gee, I don't know how to get started, I really want to contribute to Missoula, I really want to contribute to SpiderMonkey, a really great place to help us out is going to be helping us document the work that we're doing. Either it's going to be the feature that we're writing, or it's going to be an error message, and error messages are a really great place to do that. So just to give you an idea of what these look like, you can show what the error messages are in different browsers, and other browsers can also link to this page if we've got similar error messages to those other browsers. You can explain what went wrong, the type of error that happened, the different examples of invalid cases to help someone narrow down why something's a problem. As NBP is saying, you can clone an existing page and use that to create a new page. I think that's going to be possible. It turns out that I don't have credentials yet to create new pages, so I recently requested them. I'll find out for you next time so that we can start improving the documentation that exists on MDN, because that is now going to be our job, and whoever wants to help us is going to be very much appreciated. Yeah. And yeah, so it also says who contributed last time. Here we have MDN contributors. So your help would be very much appreciated. Right, so I was compiling something. Wonder if it's done. It looks done. Now, if I run my little thingy again, private fields aren't valid in this context. The error is now different, so that is the right place to do it. Let's see if I didn't mess up the rest of the things. So for example, the one that Martin just, not Martin, Matthew just did, it should still be the correct one. Ooh, wait. Is that because I use the illegal one? I think it's because I use the illegal one, isn't it? Yeah, I just use the illegal private fields, so good. They're both working in the same place. I could have added a print statement, couldn't I? That would have made this easier. So, and we shouldn't have any errors except for that last one. And class constructor must be invoked with new. Oh, yeah, that's true. Class constructors need to use new. New. But that means we ran it, which is awesome. Which means that it's like working. And let's get one last one. And this should also fail. Hash is not followed by the identifier. Yes, that's a different error message. Oops. Reference to undeclared private field or method X. Okay, cool. Let's very quickly make a new error message and throw it all in and make sure that it works, and then I'll run the tests on it, and then we're done here. So we want a new thing. Or maybe rather than saying private field, we'll call it hash outside class. Terrible name, I'm sorry. And let's grab the error page. Yeah. Names are so hard. Okay, so I'm just going to create a new thing here, which is going to be hash outside class. I'll come up with something better. I'm going to let this take one argument. And this is syntax error. It's not really a type. I think it's a syntax error. And the message, what should this message be? Let's go with unexpected private field, unexpected private identifier. And this should be 0. Outside of class body, did you intend to use quotes? Or rather, I don't know, maybe this should be used, maybe this should be clarified in the learn more. I'm not too sure, because most of our error messages are pretty short and don't recommend a change, which may be handled by the MDN docs. I don't know. I will put this up to review and see what the original poster thinks, and then they can say what's a better idea there. Okay, and that brings me to, we have JS message hash outside class. Okay, and Ian writes, I think a suggestion for how to help more probably belongs in Learn More. And syntax error should be short and sweet. I agree with that, so I'm gonna go with that, with what Ian is saying. So this should be working. Let's make it. And then I'm gonna prepare a patch, and then we're gonna submit it. As long as there's an MDN page. Speaking of which, I forgot to set up the MDN page. So let's make sure that we have something that'll allow us to do that. So this is building. Error docs. We currently don't have error docs here. And nothing is related to private fields. I guess it doesn't matter which order this is in. So I'm just going to add it to the end, unless I'm wrong, and then please correct me. Hash outside class. Hash outside class. This is usually added when the MDN page is added. Okay, fair. So, but I would have to do this eventually. Because this is the thing that would allow that learn more to exist. Yep, this mapped value, this one here, let's for example take this can't assign to property. I'm going to copy it, and let's look at an example. For example here. Here we have invalid date, and if I paste can't assign to property, I should be taken to a page that's about this error message. So I will create the error message, and this will be all in one patch so that we address all of the concerns, because it'll need to be addressed. So good. Programming. Let's do some programming. This is going to take a while. Awesome. Okay. So, any questions, any comments, any wishes for the next stream? I don't know if I'll be 100% ready for async top level await by the next stream. So if people have requests and have seen the bug list that is in my Twitch stream. Incidentally, if you haven't seen it, let's show it to you. Yes, this is the Are We Documented Yet page. But what I wanted to show is the if you go to my Twitch page, there are, and this is going to be really meta because I'm going to see myself. Yep, there we go. Here are the resources, and here's the bug list. So if you look through the bug list and see something that you find interesting, you can definitely comment with which one you want to see. For example, if we go to bug number 3, some of the bugs were already resolved, so I removed them. Oh, I'm gonna have to do this anyway, so this might be our next one. Lazily resolve properties for functions break expected property order, because name and length should be in the correct order, and we are currently not doing that. So check that out and see if there's anything that you're interested in there. Right. This is going to take a while to compile. And you'll notice that I missed prepare settle in a couple of places. This is again because I'm building this on top of the previous batch. I'll move it off and put it in the right place. This was mostly so that we had faster compile times. Any questions from the chat for today? Why is this taking so long? Well, we're going to be here for like a couple of minutes, so I don't know if I can tell you folks anything else that's interesting. Ian and I, oh. Yeah, so Matthew says, Matthew implemented our private fields implementation, and he's saying that it's great that we're improving our error messages, and this is a great type of first bug if you're looking to get started on SpiderMonkey. Super easy to do. We'll take you through the code base. It's a really nice way to like trace the way that things are being done in the code base, figure out what's being called when, how we're getting to certain situations. So yeah. In case you're not following me on Twitter, you may also have missed that Ian and I did a Q&A with JS Congress, and I will just post that in the chat in a second. Here we are. In case you want to watch Ian and myself talk about SpiderMonkey, that's where we're doing that. I don't know why this is taking so long. I seem to recall that it went faster last time. Maybe I did something wrong. Let me take another look at what I wrote. This looks fine. This doesn't look wrong. Well, that should be there, because I am intending to make that MDN page. Yes, there is an explanation of why we call it SpiderMonkey. It's a good one. Oh, I changed a header, which is exactly what I wanted to avoid. Yeah, that's probably it. The whole world is being reconstructed, and because my computer is also streaming, it is having a very hard time keeping up and doing this in a timely manner. Yeah, what can you do? Well, might as well look at another bug, eh? Let's take a look at the next bug and see what we can find out ahead of time while this is compiling, so that you can see this get finished and compiled and also submitted, because I've never shown you how to submit a bug before. For now, let's go to the bug list and actually read this issue and talk about it a bit. So we've got more test 262 failures because we are lazily creating name and length properties of functions, which breaks expected property iteration order. So we have a list of tests that are failing. And Jason writes that we used to have a lot of resolve hooks and they all had this problem. The general fix, apart from doing away with resolve hooks, would be to keep these properties lazily, but lazily create them in the right order, so that the list of properties physically present is always a prefix of what the spec says and what the user must observe to be there. I didn't entirely absorb that, but I did understand that we want to lazily create them. Ian says that based on my error messages, it looks like one step left in my prepared set LM patch for warp. Yes, I am missing an operator. I'm missing it in a switch. Actually, we can take a look at that. Let's take a look at it. Let's go there. Just won't be part of this patch. And the place where I'm having that issue is on line 303, where we have a switch statement, arguments regex function this to property key. Oh, really? Do I really not have prepare set lm? Because it should be there. And that should fix that. But is that the right thing to do? I just did that because it's where to property key is. Yeah, that looks right. And Ian says it's right. Therefore it's right. Ian knows everything. Good. It's still compiling, damn it. Okay. All right, let's keep looking at the next bug then. So we have test 262 failures because of this. So let's take a look at those tests. Why not? Okay, here's the first one. So I wonder if this is still failing. Is it being skipped? Let's take a look at which tests we are skipping. And this test is called, oops. Let's see if we are, if this is in this list. Yes, it is in this list. Okay, so that'll be interesting to see if that works. Oh good, we have another error in the compiler. Let's take a look at that. Now it's saying that I'm missing the prepare set lm in ion cache IR compiler. That is correct, because I didn't finish the ion cache IR compiler bit. So, but I can show you what that looks like. Also, additionally, how do people feel about this less planned version of the stream? Because I didn't go through all of the steps before I started the stream. I thought, let's see how me figuring it out on camera feels to people, if we get some engagement, if people are enjoying it. So does this feel nice? Did you prefer it when I had everything scripted? Which is better, I guess, is my question. While I find out what's going on with this. 632. And I will just do the exact same thing. People are quiet today. We don't have very many people chatting. People are saying either. That's good. Yeah. Okay, good if you don't notice much of a difference. Actually, that either means my script is bad or that that my programming live is not that bad. Yeah, this totally wasn't scripted. I had no idea what I was going to do with this one. Which is also why we're stuck watching this thing compile for a while. Otherwise, I would have had like a pre-baked version that you could see. Okay, fine. Let's go back to reading about the bug. Right, so we have this, and Someone is asking, what sort of systems do Missoula use to compile code, especially stuff that needs full Firefox? Asking because it took me half an hour to compile SpiderMonkey on my system. So are you talking about in terms of system like the physical computer that we're working with? Or like, well, I guess you're asking about computer operating system and stuff like that. I'm using like a MacBook Pro. It's one of the newer ones. It has a tendency to burn through everything because it's always overheating. But I think there was just something wrong with that set of MacBooks. It takes me, when I'm compiling like when I change a header file that's used everywhere, for example, stack inline header, it takes forever to compile, like maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes. To build all of Firefox from source takes a really long time. I think it took me almost between half an hour or an hour. I think it might have been an hour to compile all of Firefox without the artifact build. And I don't know if you've already created a Moz config file for yourself. So Moz config. You can turn this thing on, which enables artifact builds. And with that on, so you have to have one of these options on. This one or this one. I'm usually building inside of the SpiderMonkey directory using a custom script, which most people don't use. You should use your Moz config files. But if you enable artifact builds, it's a lot faster. And Ian and Nicola are saying that you want as many cores as possible to build this thing. It takes a long time, but if you're not changing a header that requires that everything gets rebuilt, it doesn't take that long. Usually when I'm preparing these streams, I plan the stream so that I have segments that will take us up to a certain point where if I have to do a major compilation, I do that off stream. And then when we come back to the stream, I'm stopping at points where you can actually see what happens and that the compilation time doesn't take too long. So once you compile it the first time, it's usually faster unless you're touching a header, basically. Oh, I don't want to enable artifact builds. Yeah. And it's still building. I hope we're not going to be here forever. I'm going to time box this. If it takes more than like a minute, then I'm just going to say it works. Congratulations, everybody. And then I'll post the patch and also the bug number so you can see the patch. And then we'll call it a day. Yeah. We've been waiting for this for 15 minutes. So we're not going to wait any longer. And what I'll do is I will post the patch. Actually, let me show you what a patch looks like. This is not done, but that doesn't mean that we can't do the patch bit. Just because it might fail horribly doesn't mean that we can't do various things. So what I'm going to do is, why doesn't my wheel work for this anymore? So we have a bug number. I'm going to go to central. Hopefully it'll just let me drag my changes over. I'm going to cancel that build because it's not going to finish. And we have other things to do. And central, like even for me when I'm streaming, even to change branches takes a lot of time. So yeah, this is all going to take time. I wonder if I can slow things down. Ah, there we go. We are on central and we should have a change for us to add. So I'm pretty confident about what this is going to be, but we'll double, there we go. Here are our changes. So I've added an error docs, which should only be done once we have the MDN page, but I'm going to add that. I have updated the private fields not supported message to say illegal character. And JS message outside of class, I've updated to say unexpected identifier outside of class body. Finally, I have changed the parser to be able to give the error where it needs to be. Okay, cool. Let's do htcommit message and then the bug number. Whoops. Oh no. Let me grab the bug number. And then I'm going to add more information there. Matthew, you are getting the review. Hate it when that happens. I think I need to do that. And now we wait. Here I was saying I'm not going to do 2-hour-long sessions anymore, and we're almost at 2 hours again. Oh, yeah, we have SC cache. I had it set up while I was working in the office, but now when I'm compiling, I use make -j. Yeah, that's true. I don't need to include it, but it's good practice to include the bang. I just explicitly tell make to use multiple cores when I'm using make, but I think people who use mosconfig probably have a smarter thing, so don't do what I do. Do what I say, not what I do. Soon. Very soon. Has everybody got a good Friday planned? Because I'm going to be playing Yakuza 0. It's a good game. Last night we won a chicken by bowling. I never would have thought that something as simple as a commit would take this long. Yes! Okay, now I can do argfab. No, not that. Mosfab. I think it's just mosfab. I haven't submitted something for a while. Yeah, my computer is just having the time of its life. Mosfab is a little program that we use that builds on top of Arcanist, I think it's called, and makes it less difficult to use. Unless you're streaming, in which case everything is difficult to use. Okay, at some point this will hopefully do everything. I'm gonna try and close some tabs. It even says that my CPU usage is only like 5%, so this is incredible to me, how long this takes. I'm gonna avoid closing things because this will make it even longer. No, it's not compiling in the background. I stopped it from compiling. This is just life when you're streaming for some reason. It's checking the commits. There's only one commit. That's mosfab. Just oh, come on. I misspelled your name. I'm sorry. Is this gonna take forever? I don't think this is actually mosfab. This is just streaming and trying to do anything with a computer at the same time. I need a more powerful machine, actually. Or I need a machine that I can SSH into and then do all of the programming on that machine and just stream what I'm doing with the terminal. Damn, this is taking a long time. I think that we are almost at 2 hours. Oh, look at that, it worked. I'm just not going to put a reviewer. Matthew, I'm going to assign you once it finishes. Yes, I'm going to ask them. I usually don't ask them to edit my streams, but I'm going to ask them to edit this one to take off a long period at the end where we were waiting for the compile and then we were waiting for this because this is just boring. Missing reviewers. Great. Don't worry, it's still coming to you. You still have to deal with it. Yay. It's going faster now. Yes. And any second now. And then people will be able to see where this goes. And this is the usual loop that I do when I work. So make check out central, make sure you're up to date, make your changes, commit message with the bug number and a reviewer. In this case, I didn't want to bother with figuring it out what I was doing wrong there. Probably just the bang. And then finally, we'll see it on Fabricator, and then you'll have seen everything. Good, there it is. So there's our lovely patch, and I'm switching back over to the browser where we can, well, actually it should already be on Bugzilla. So if I refresh the Bugzilla page, you'll see that I've submitted a patch here. And here we are. The change, hash outside class. Here we have illegal character hash, and then JS message hash outside class, unexpected private identifier used outside of a class body, plus the change to the parser, which gets it to happen in the right spot. That's it, folks, and I can't do anything with this yet. Oh, it's because I'm not logged in. Okay, that's it. Thank you all so much for coming. The ending was a little bit slow. Sorry about that. I hope you had a nice time. And please let me know either through the GitHub repository, compiler dev, which is linked in the Twitch, or through Twitter, or through anything else about any wishes. If you want to learn certain things about SpiderMonkey, please let us know, and then I will try to cover it. That's it. Bye, folks.